The transport ship landed on Valari Prime under gray skies. Commander Yuna stood at the window and watched the capital city stretch out below her. Towers of glass and metal reached toward the clouds. Hover vehicles moved through the air like silver insects. Everything looked exactly as she remembered it, but she was not the same. The war had ended 3 months ago. The Valari Empire had won. They had conquered 17 new worlds and absorbed 6 new species into their dominion. Humanity was the latest addition to their collection of subjects. Earth had fought for 11 years before finally falling. Now humans served as laborers, servants, and slaves across the empire. Yuna should have felt proud. She had fought in that war. She had led ships into battle. She had burned enemy stations and watched planets surrender. But she felt nothing except a cold emptiness in her chest. The left side of her face was covered in burn scars. A plasma blast had caught her during the final campaign. The medical officers had offered to repair the damage with regeneration treatments. She had refused. She wanted to keep the scars. They reminded her of what she had lost. Her entire unit was dead. 47 soldiers under her command. They had walked into an ambush on a moon called Varric 7. Someone had given their position to the enemy. Someone she had trusted. His name was Dohan. He had been her bonded partner for 6 years. They had shared meals together. They had planned a future together. And he had sold their unit's location to enemy forces for a bag of credits and safe passage off-world. Yuna had survived only because she had been at the rear of the formation when the attack began. She had watched her soldiers die. She had heard their screams through her communication device. And she had been too far away to save any of them. Now she was home. The Empire called her a hero. They wanted to give her medals and honors. They wanted her to stand on stages and wave at crowds. She had ignored every summons. She had rejected every invitation. She wanted only to be left alone. Her family estate waited for her outside the city. It was a large building made of white stone, surrounded by gardens that had grown wild during her absence. The house had belonged to her grandmother, then her mother, and now it belonged to her. It was empty and silent and perfect for someone who wanted to disappear. Yuna moved into the estate and closed the doors behind her. She did not hire staff. She did not contact old friends. She simply existed within the walls like a ghost, eating when she remembered to eat, sleeping when exhaustion forced her eyes closed. The nightmares came every night. She would see Varric 7 again. She would hear the explosions. She would watch her soldiers fall one by one while she screamed orders that no one could follow. She would wake up drenched in sweat, her heart's pounding, her hands shaking. 2 months passed this way. Then her family intervened. Her older brother, Junho, arrived one morning without warning. He was a successful merchant, well connected in society, and deeply concerned about the family reputation. He found Yuna sitting in a dark room, unwashed and thin, surrounded by empty meal containers. "This cannot continue," Junho said. "You are a disgrace to our name." Yuna did not look at him. "Then remove me from the family records. Do not be dramatic. You need help. You need servants. You need to present yourself properly." He placed a data tablet on the table beside her. "I have arranged for you to receive a household slave. The auction is this afternoon. I do not want a slave. I do not care what you want. Mother is upset. The neighbors are talking. You will attend the auction. You will purchase a servant, and you will begin acting like a member of respectable society." Junho stood up. "I will send a vehicle for you in 3 hours." He left before she could argue further. Yuna stared at the data tablet. She could refuse. She could ignore her brother and continue living in isolation. But she knew Junho. He would not stop. He would send more family members. He would create problems until she gave in. It was easier to simply obey. The auction house was a large building in the commercial district. Hundreds of buyers moved through the halls, examining the merchandise on display. Most of the slaves were from recently conquered species. They stood on platforms with numbers attached to their clothing, their eyes empty and defeated. Yuna walked through the crowds without interest. She did not want any of them. She did not want company. She did not want someone watching her fall apart in her own home. She reached the back of the building where the cheapest slaves were kept. These were the ones nobody wanted. The sick, the old, the species considered too weak to be useful, and the humans. There were only 5 humans at this auction. They were small and fragile looking compared to the Volari. They had soft skin and no claws. They could not see in the dark or hear frequencies beyond a narrow range. They were, by every measurement, inferior. Most buyers walked past them without a second glance. Yuna stopped in front of one of them. He was a male, perhaps 30 years old by human standards. He had dark hair and dark eyes. His clothing was simple and clean. Unlike the other slaves who looked at the floor or trembled when buyers approached, this one stood straight and met her gaze directly. There was no fear in his eyes. No hatred either. Just a calm, steady observation, as if he was studying her the same way she was studying him. "Name," Yuna said. "Tayo," he answered. His voice was quiet but clear. "What did you do before?" "I was a medical worker." "A healer." Yuna almost laughed. "A healer. What use would a healer be to her?" She did not want to be healed. She wanted to be left alone. But something about his stillness interested her. He did not beg. He did not try to sell himself. He simply stood there, waiting, as if the outcome did not matter to him either way. She purchased him for a small amount of credits. The auction staff seemed surprised that anyone wanted a human at all. They traveled back to the estate in silence. Taiho sat across from her in the transport vehicle, looking out the window at the alien city passing by. Yuna wondered what he was thinking. She wondered if he missed his home, his world, his people. She did not ask Dodd when they arrived at the estate. She showed him to a small room near the kitchen. It had a bed and a window and nothing else. "You will maintain the household," she said. "Clean, prepare meals. Stay out of my way." Taiho nodded. "I understand. I do not want conversation. I do not want company. Do your work and leave me alone." "Yes, Commander." She turned and walked away, leaving him standing in the doorway of his tiny room. That night, Yuna sat in the darkness of her study and wondered why she had chosen him. There had been stronger slaves at the auction, more skilled ones, more useful ones, but none of them had looked at her the way he did. None of them had met her eyes without flinching from her scars. Perhaps that was why or perhaps she simply did not care anymore. She closed her eyes and waited for the nightmares to come. The first week passed slowly. Yuna kept to her rooms and Taiho kept to his duties. They barely spoke. She would find meals waiting for her when she emerged from her study. She would find the floors clean and the windows washed. But she rarely saw him doing the work. He moved through the house like a shadow, appearing only when necessary, disappearing the moment his task was complete. It was exactly what she had asked for. The nightmares continued. Every night she returned to Varick 7. Every night she watched her soldiers die. She would wake gasping for air, her hands reaching for a weapon that was not there, her mind confused between past and present. During the day, she sat in darkness. She did not read. She did not work. She simply existed, trapped inside her own thoughts, reliving her failures again and again. The Empire's physicians had offered her treatments: neural adjustment, memory suppression, emotional regulation. They could make her forget the pain. They could make her function normally again. She had refused everything. She wanted to feel the pain. She deserved to feel it. 47 soldiers had trusted her with their lives, and she had led them into a trap. The least she could do was carry the weight of their deaths, but the weight was crushing her. She stopped eating regularly. The meals Taiho prepared would sit untouched for hours. She lost weight. Her skin grew pale. Her eyes developed dark circles beneath them. Taiho said nothing about any of this. He simply adjusted. The meals became smaller, simpler, easier to eat. She would find a cup of warm broth beside her chair, a small plate of soft food near her hand. Nothing overwhelming, nothing that required effort. She ate without thinking about it. Her body responded before her mind could refuse. One morning, she woke to find a flowering plant on her windowsill. It was a small thing, blue petals opening toward the light. She did not know where it came from. She did not ask Dot, but she found herself looking at it throughout the day. It was alive. It was growing. It did not know about war or death or betrayal. It simply existed, reaching toward the sun. She let it stay. The second week brought worse nights. The nightmares became more intense. She would scream in her sleep, loud enough to echo through the empty halls. She would tear at her sheets and knock things from her bedside table. When she woke, she would find bruises on her arms from hitting the walls. One night, she woke from a particularly terrible dream. She was shaking so badly she could not stand. Her breath came in short, painful gasps. The room seemed to spin around her. And then she saw him. Tae stood in the doorway of her bedroom. He did not enter. He did not speak. He simply stood there, a still figure in the darkness, watching her. "What are you doing?" she demanded. Her voice came out broken and rough. "I heard you," he said simply. "I did not know if you needed help." "I do not need help. Go back to your room." He nodded and turned to leave. "Wait." The word escaped before she could stop it. He paused, looking back at her. She did not know what she wanted to say. She did not know why she had stopped him. The silence stretched between them. "How long have you been standing there?" she finally asked. "A few minutes." "Why did you not come in?" "You told me to stay out of your way. I did not want to intrude unless you called for me." There was no judgment in his voice. No pity, just a simple statement of fact. He had followed her orders exactly, even while she screamed in the darkness. Something shifted in her chest. A small crack in the wall she had built around herself. "Go back to sleep," she said quietly. He left without another word. But the next night, when the terrors came again, she found herself looking toward the doorway. And he was there, silent, waiting, ready to help if she asked. She did not ask. But somehow, knowing he was there made it easier to breathe. The days began to blur together. Yuna lost track of time. She did not know if it was morning or evening. She did not know what day of the week it was. She simply drifted through her house like a ghost. But Taiho kept everything running. The estate remained clean. Food appeared at regular intervals. The garden outside her window, once wild and overgrown, slowly began to take shape again. She would see him through the glass, pulling weeds and trimming bush, moving with patient determination. He never complained. He never asked questions. He simply worked. One afternoon, Yuna found herself watching him from her study window. He was kneeling in the garden, planting new flowers along the pathway. His movements were careful and precise. There was something almost peaceful about watching him work. She wondered about his life before. Had he had a family? A home? Friends? A purpose beyond serving an alien master who barely acknowledged his existence? She wondered if he missed the sun of his homeworld. She had read that Earth had only one sun, a yellow star that humans seemed strangely attached to. Did he think about it when he looked at the twin suns of Valari Prime? These thoughts surprised her. She had not wondered about another being's feelings in a long time. She had not cared about anyone or anything since Varric 7. That night, the nightmares came again. But this time, when she woke screaming, she did not immediately fall back into the darkness of her own mind. Instead, she lay there, breathing slowly, and listened to the sounds of the house. She heard footsteps in the hallway, soft and careful, moving toward her door. She heard them stop outside her room. She heard nothing else for a long moment. Then the footsteps retreated, moving away toward the kitchen. A few minutes later, she smelled something warm and comforting. Tea, perhaps? Or broth. She did not get up. She did not call for him. But she lay in her bed and breathed in the scent. And somehow it helped push the nightmares further away. In the morning, she found a cup of cold tea on the table outside her door. He had brought it for her in the night, just in case she wanted it. She had not wanted it then, but she drank it now, cold as it was, and felt something strange and unfamiliar stir in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it. It was gratitude. She had almost forgotten what that felt like. The visitor arrived without warning on a cold morning. Yuna was sitting in her study when she heard the door chime. Before she could respond, Taiho appeared at her door. "Someone is here to see you, Commander," he said quietly. "Send them away." "She has already entered. She says she is an old colleague." Yuna felt her body tense. She knew who it was before the woman appeared in her doorway. Admiral Jie stepped into the study with a smile that did not reach her eyes. She was tall and elegant, wearing the formal uniform of the Imperial Fleet. Medals decorated her chest. Her dark hair was pulled back in a perfect style. Everything about her spoke of power and success. "Yuna," Jihei said warmly, "it has been too long. I did not invite you." "I know. That is why I came uninvited. Someone needs to check on our wounded hero." Jihei looked around the dark room with obvious disapproval. "This is how you live now? Hiding in shadows with a human servant?" Taiho stood silently near the door. His face showed nothing. "What do you want, Jie?" The Admiral sat down without being invited. She crossed her legs and studied Yuna with sharp eyes. "I want to help you. The war is over. The Empire is entering a new age. There are opportunities for those willing to take them. I am not interested in opportunities. That is obvious." Jie leaned forward. "The Council has noticed your absence. They wonder if perhaps you are no longer fit for your position. Perhaps the trauma of Varric 7 was too much for you." Yuna's hands curled into fists. "Varric 7 was a massacre. My entire unit was killed. Yes, very tragic. But the war is won, and we must move forward." Jihee's smile remained fixed. "I could speak to the Council on your behalf. Tell them you simply need rest, that you will return to duty soon. And what would you want in return? Your support. Your family name still carries weight. An endorsement from the hero of the 7th campaign would be valuable to someone seeking advancement." Yuna stared at her. Jie had always been ambitious. She had always been calculating. But there was something in her eyes now that Yuna had not seen before. A hunger, a greed that seemed almost desperate. "No," Yuna said flatly. Jihee's smile flickered. "Think carefully before you refuse." "I have thought. The answer is no." The Admiral stood slowly. Her expression hardened. "You were always stubborn. Even when we served together, you never knew when to accept reality." She glanced at Taiho. "Now you sit in the dark with a primitive slave while the Empire moves on without you. Perhaps that is where you belong. Get out of my house." "Very well. But remember this conversation, Yuna. When you find yourself alone and forgotten, remember that I offered you a chance." Jie walked to the door. She paused and looked back. The council meeting is in 3 days. If you do not appear, they will assume you have surrendered your titles. Everything you worked for, everything you sacrificed, will be given to someone else." She left without waiting for a response. The silence after her departure was heavy. Yuna sat motionless, her mind spinning with anger and confusion. The council. Her titles. She had forgotten that any of it mattered, but something about Jihee's visit disturbed her. Something she could not identify. Suddenly, the rage that had been building inside her erupted. She swept her arm across the desk, sending data tablets and containers crashing to the floor. She grabbed a chair and threw it against the wall. She smashed her fists against the desk until her hands bled. When the fury finally drained away, she found herself on the floor, surrounded by broken objects. Her knuckles torn and bleeding. Footsteps approached. Taiho knelt beside her with a medical kit in his hands. "You should not be here," she said weakly. "You are injured." I said leave. He did not leave. Instead, he gently took her hand and began cleaning the wounds. His touch was careful and skilled. He worked quickly, applying medicine and bandages with practiced ease. "You were a healer," Yuna said. It was not a question. A medic. On Earth, during the war. He did not look up from his work. "I served in the Resistance Medical Corps. We treated soldiers who fought against the invasion. Against us. Against the Empire. Yes." She watched him bandage her other hand. "How many Valari soldiers did you save your fighters to kill?" "I did not count." He finished the bandage and finally met her eyes. "I was a healer. My job was to save lives, not take them. I did not choose which side those lives were on." There was no anger in his voice. No resentment. Just a simple statement of fact. "Why do you not hate me?" she asked. Would it change anything? She had no answer. He gathered the medical supplies and stood. "You should rest, Commander. The wounds will heal in a few days." Taiho. His name felt strange on her tongue. She had barely spoken it since he arrived. "What happened to your people?" "Your family?" He was quiet for a long moment. "My wife died in the bombing of Seoul. My daughter was taken to a labor colony. I do not know if she is still alive." The words hit Yuna like a physical blow. She had commanded ships that bombed cities. She had ordered strikes that killed civilians. She had never thought about the families left behind. "I'm sorry," she said. The words felt useless, empty. "So am I." He walked toward the door. But sorrow does not bring back the dead. It only keeps us trapped in the past. He left her alone with her bleeding hands and her broken room and the terrible weight of understanding. She had lost 47 soldiers at Varric 7. He had lost an entire world. His wife, his daughter, everything he had ever known. And yet he still found the strength to kneel beside a broken enemy commander and tend her wounds with gentle hands. That night, Yuna did not sleep. She sat in her study and thought about Taiho. She thought about his wife and his daughter. She thought about all the humans who had lost everything to a war they could not win. And for the first time since Varric 7, she thought about someone other than herself. It was a small change, but it was a beginning. Yuna stood before the mirror for the first time in months. She looked at her scars, the damaged skin that covered half her face. She looked at the hollow cheeks and the tired eyes. She barely recognized herself, but something had changed inside her. The visit from GA had awakened something. The conversation with Taiho had deepened it. She was still broken, still hurting, but the endless darkness had cracked open, and a small light was beginning to enter. She wanted answers. Varric 7 had been a trap. Someone had given their position to the enemy. For months, she had blamed Dohwan, her former partner who had disappeared after the battle. But Dohwan had been a low-ranking officer. How had he known their exact route? How had he contacted enemy forces without detection? Someone else had been involved. Someone higher. Yuna began to investigate. She accessed old military records from her personal terminal. She reviewed the communications logs from the weeks before, Varric 7. She studied the movement orders and the supply routes. Taiho helped her organize the data, sorting through thousands of files with patient attention to detail. "You are good at this," she said one evening as they worked. "Pattern recognition," he replied. "Humans learn to find connections. It helped us survive during the occupation." She nodded and returned to her work. The more she dug, the more she found. Small details that did not fit together. Orders that had been changed at the last minute. Communication gaps that should not have existed. Supply shipments that had been rerouted away from her unit just before the attack. And at the center of every inconsistency was the same name, Admiral G.A. Yuna felt cold as the picture became clear. G.A. had served on the Strategic Command during the final campaign. She had had access to all troop movements. She had authority to adjust orders without explanation. Do-Wan had not been the mastermind. He had been a tool. Someone had given him the information and the means to betray the unit. Someone had used him to eliminate a rival commander and her soldiers. Why would she do this? Yuna whispered. "Power," Taiho said quietly. "In my experience, those who seek power will sacrifice anyone to get it." Yuna remembered the battle that had followed Varric 7, with her unit destroyed. The enemy had shifted their defenses to meet a different attack. An attack led by G.A. An attack that had succeeded brilliantly, earning G.A. medals and promotion. She had used Yuna's soldiers as bait. She had traded 47 lives for a strategic advantage and a boost to her career. The rage that filled Yuna was different from before. It was not the blind fury of a broken mind. It was cold and focused and steady. "I need to gather evidence," she said. "Real evidence that will stand before the council." They worked through the night. Taiho proved invaluable, his quick mind finding connections that Yuna missed. By morning, they had assembled a strong case. Financial records showing payments to Do-Wan from hidden accounts. Communication logs that trace back to Jihee's personal terminal. Witness statements from soldiers who had survived other suspicious incidents. It was enough. It had to be enough that they had made a mistake. They had underestimated how carefully G.A. was watching. The attack came 2 nights later. Yuna was sleeping when the sounds woke her. Footsteps. Many footsteps. Moving through her house with professional silence, she grabbed the weapon she kept beside her bed and rolled to the floor. The door burst open and 2 figures rushed in. They wore dark clothing and carried military-grade weapons. Assassins. Yuna fired twice. One fell. The other dove for cover and returned fire. The plasma bolt missed her head by inches. She ran into the hallway and found more of them. 3, 4. Too many. She fought with everything she had. Her training took over. She ducked and fired and moved, using the narrow corridors to limit their advantage. But she was outnumbered and out of practice. A lucky shot grazed her shoulder. Another hit her leg. She stumbled and fell. The lead assassin stood over her, weapon pointed at her face. "Admiral G.A. sends her regards," he said. Then something hit him from behind. Taiho had appeared from nowhere. He moved with a speed and violence that Yuna had never seen from him. He struck the assassin in the throat with the edge of his hand, then grabbed the weapon and twisted it away. In the same motion, he fired twice, dropping 2 more attackers. The remaining assassins turned toward this new threat. Taiho did not hesitate. He threw a heavy object at one, then rushed the other, getting inside his reach before he could aim. The fight was brutal and efficient. Taiho used every part of his body as a weapon. He exploited weaknesses with terrifying precision. Within seconds, both assassins were down. The last one, wounded but alive, tried to crawl toward the door. Taiho stopped him with a boot to the back. Yuna stared at her slave, breathing hard, blood running from her wounds. "How did you do that?" Taiho looked at her with those calm, steady eyes. Medical workers on Earth were not just healers. We were often the last line of defense for our patients. He pressed harder on the assassin's back. "We learned to protect those in our care. You killed them. They were trying to kill you." Yuna struggled to her feet. Her leg burned with pain. GA sent them. She knows we are investigating. Then we need to move quickly. Taiho looked down at the surviving assassin. "But first, this one will tell us everything he knows." The assassin did talk. Under Taiho's questioning, he revealed everything. GA had been monitoring Yuna since her visit. She knew about the investigation. She had ordered the assassination before the council meeting tomorrow. There would be no more time for careful planning. They would have to act now. Yuna looked at Taiho as they prepared to leave. Her entire body hurt. Her mind was spinning with fear and anger and determination. "You could have stayed hidden," she said. "Let them kill me. You would have been free." Taiho met her gaze. "Freedom means nothing if I abandon those who depend on me. That is something humans do not forget, no matter how far from home we are." For a moment, Yuna saw him clearly. Not as a slave, not as a servant, but as a man who had lost everything and still found the strength to fight for someone else. "Thank you," she said quietly. He nodded once. "Save your thanks. We still have a battle to win." They left the house together as dawn broke over Valari Prime. The Imperial Council chamber was a massive hall of white stone and golden light. Columns rose toward a ceiling painted with scenes of Valari conquest. Hundreds of officials, nobles, and military officers filled the gallery seats. At the center sat the 12 members of the High Council, the most powerful beings in the Empire. Admiral GA stood at the speaker's platform, dressed in her finest uniform, her medal shining. She was halfway through a speech about the future of the fleet when the doors burst open. Yuna walked into the chamber. Her clothes were torn and stained with blood. Bandages covered her wounds. But she walked with her head high and her eyes burning with purpose. Behind her came Taiho. The crowd erupted in murmurs. Jihee's expression flickered for just a moment before she recovered her composure. "Commander Yuna," she said smoothly. "We were told you were too ill to attend." "I am sure you were." Yuna approached the speaker's platform. "I am sure you hoped I would never attend anything again." "I do not understand what you mean." "Then let me explain." Yuna turned to face the council. 3 months ago, my unit was ambushed at Varric 7. 47 soldiers died. For months, I believed it was the work of a single traitor. But I was wrong. She activated a holographic display. Documents and recordings filled the air above her. The ambush was planned by someone inside our own command. Someone who saw my unit as an obstacle to their ambition. Someone who traded 47 lives for a military victory and a promotion. She pointed at GA. Admiral GA orchestrated the massacre. The chamber exploded in chaos. Officials shouted. Officers rose from their seats. Jihee's face went pale, then red with anger. "This is madness," Jihee declared. "She is clearly suffering from battle trauma. Her mind is broken. My mind is clearer than it has been in months." Yuna displayed more evidence. Financial records showing payments to the traitor Doan from accounts traced to Jihee's personal funds. Communication logs showing orders that expose my unit's position. Testimony from a surviving assassin who attacked my home last night on Jihee's orders. The council members studied the evidence with growing concern. GA tried to speak, but Yuna continued. 47 soldiers trusted their empire to protect them. They believed they were fighting for a just cause. Instead, they were sacrificed by one of their own commanders for personal gain. Yuna's voice filled the chamber. If this is what our empire has become, then perhaps we are no better than the enemies we defeated. Jie stepped forward, desperation creeping into her voice. This evidence was gathered by a disgraced commander and a human slave. How can you trust anything they present? The human probably fabricated everything. The human, Yuna said quietly, saved my life. He could have let the assassins kill me. He would have been free. Instead, he fought for me because that is what his people do. They protect those who cannot protect themselves. She looked at Taiho. Let him speak. Let the council hear from someone who has no reason to lie. The council members exchanged glances. Finally, the eldest of them, a female with silver hair, nodded. The human may address the council. Taiho walked forward. He was small compared to the Valari around him. He wore simple clothes stained with the same battle as Yuna, but he carried himself with a dignity that made the room fall silent. I am no one important, he began. I was a medic on a small planet you conquered 11 years ago. I watched my city burn. I lost my wife. My daughter was taken from me. I have every reason to hate your empire and everyone in it. He paused, letting the words settle. But hatred is a fire that burns the one who carries it. I learned this during the war. I saw what hatred did to my people and to yours. It makes us blind. It makes us forget that our enemies are also beings with families and dreams and fears. Taiho looked at Yuna. Commander Yuna bought me as a slave. She did not need to treat me as a person. Your law does not require it. But she did. Slowly, without realizing it, she began to see me as something more than property. That is rare. That is precious. He turned back to the council. Humans do not serve because we are weak. We serve because we have learned that true strength is not about power. It is about endurance. It is about rising again after we fall. It is about protecting those who need us, even when we have nothing left to give. The chamber was absolutely silent. The evidence Commander Yuna presents is real. Admiral Jie did betray her own soldiers. But the greater crime is what this betrayal represents. When leaders sacrifice their people for personal gain, the empire does not grow stronger. It rots from within. Taiho straightened his shoulders. I am just a human slave. My words carry no weight in your laws. But I have watched your empire from the inside. I have seen its strength and its weakness. And I believe that what you do today will determine what kind of empire you become. He stepped back and stood beside Yuna. The silence stretched for a long moment. Then the silver-haired council member spoke. We will review the evidence. Admiral Jie, you will be detained pending investigation. She looked at Yuna. Commander, you have shown courage in bringing this matter before us. Your service to the Empire is noted. Guards moved forward to take Jie. The Admiral's composure finally broke. You cannot do this. I am one of the greatest commanders in the fleet. I won the war for you. You won nothing, Yuna said quietly. My soldiers won the war. They paid with their lives while you took the credit. Jie was led away, screaming threats and promises of revenge. The council adjourned. The crowd slowly dispersed. Yuna and Taiho walked out of the chamber together. The twin suns of Valari Prime shone brightly in a clear sky. What happens now? Taiho asked. Yuna was silent for a moment. Now I need to decide what kind of person I want to be. Not a hero. Not a victim. Something new. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a data chip. This is your freedom document. I filed it this morning. You are no longer a slave. Taiho took the chip and looked at it for a long moment. Then he looked at her. Where will you go? She asked. I could try to find my daughter. If she is still alive. He paused. Or I could stay. Why would you stay? I bought you. I kept you as property. You also listened to me. You trusted me when you trusted no one else. And you are still healing. He put the chip in his pocket. Someone needs to watch your door. Yuna felt something warm spread through her chest. Not quite happiness. Not yet. But something close. I would not be a good companion, she warned. I am still broken. So am I. Taiho almost smiled. Perhaps we can be broken together. They stood in the sunlight, two wounded souls from different worlds, bound by something stronger than chains. It was not love, not yet. It was not friendship in the way most people understood it. It was trust. And for now, that was enough.